guys, welcome to Catch Fire Podcast. Listen, man, thank you for tuning in and thank you for subscribing and being a part of this Catch Fire family. You know, we're getting so many great responses and comments about this podcast because leaders are saying, you know what, man, when I tune in, I'm getting inspired. I'm being transformed. God is doing something special in my leadership. And so listen, be sure to subscribe if you're visiting. And be sure to share, man. It really does make a difference. And we just want to try to make an impact in people's lives and really, really see some positive things done for the glory of God. So thanks for tuning in to Catch Fire. Our topic has been influence, because you can't get anything done without influence. I mean, let's be honest. You know, if we don't know how to influence people, then what are we really doing with our leadership? And being a leader now for like close to 30 years, I've been leading people. I've been training young leaders. I've been training business leaders and people who lead their family and lead in their community. And the number one thing that we learn is how to develop our influence as leaders. And so last time we talked about two types of influence. We talked about the influence that's up close. That's called impact. But we spent a lot of time talking about the influence from a distance, and we're living like in a world now where we're influencing from a distance. That's called impression. But today, I want to take a little bit of time to talk to you about making a personal impact in people's life. That's leading up close. That's influencing people up close. And so impact is when you come close to people. And there's a really there's a risk to working with people on a personal level because we're leading with our heart and we're not leading with our head. And it really is risky because, you know, when you put your heart out there, when you allow people to come into your world, when you bring them into your intimate circle, no matter where that is, you always run that risk of people hurting you or taking advantage of your vulnerability. And that's really what makes an impact, is being a leader who's vulnerable, who's open, who's a great communicator, and is able to come up close to people. That's the only way to make an impact in somebody's life, in my estimation. But the good news is that the rewards outweigh the risk. Yes, there's a risk of being hurt. Yes, there's a risk of feeling abandoned and feeling alone, but the rewards are greater. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've had people who I've allowed to come into my life, or they've allowed me to come into their life throughout the years, who I'm continuing to be connected with today. My very first disciple I ever met when I was 17 years old, you know, he's been in my life all these years and we live in different cities, but he's been a tremendous help to me in this recent season on a personal level. And so the rewards really do outweigh the risks. So let's talk a little bit today about influencing people up close and really getting close to people. I really believe that in order to make an impact up close with people, it really is a condition of our heart. We really have to take an examination of who we are as a leader in dealing with people and approaching people and really making a positive impact for them. Because, you know, we know that influence could be negative, but it should be positive. We want to lead people the right way. So the first condition of a leader's heart is that we ought to have unconditional love. Because leadership is the business of people. Developing influence has everything to do with relationships and working with others. And, you know, sometimes when you're starting out in influencing people, you know, you're called to love some pretty difficult characters. You know, I'm here today because someone loved me when I was at my most difficult. You know, times where I didn't have it all together, times where I didn't have this walk with God down the way it should have been. You know, I had a tendency to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. I was awkward in public settings. I mean, it goes on and on and on. I definitely am not the man I was then. God has really done a work in my life, but it's been through people. It's been through people who demonstrated unconditional love towards me. In the dictionary, the word unconditional means not limited by conditions. So there's no limitation to the love of an influencer. We have to really, in our heart, take the limits off and really ask God to enlarge our heart or expand our heart in the direction of people. I really believe that to have unconditional love is to have a servant's mindset, to really come into a relationship with the willingness to serve somebody else. That's what makes an impact. I've said it before, is that the only way into the throne room is through the servant's quarter. And when you go through that servant's quarter, God always makes a way for someone who's willing to make a difference in somebody's life. When you make a difference for others, God makes a difference for you. So God's plan for personal impact is to really to serve with unconditional and unlimited love. And what does that really look like? Well, to me, God's plan for personal impact is to really take a risk on people where you're not guaranteed a return on your investment. Now, in our last teaching, when I was talking about impression, I said that people that make the right impression or an effective impression and who influence from a distance, they model wise investment. But let me say this: when it comes to relationships, there's no greater investment than a relationship. I mean, you can invest in business, you can invest in finance. There's all kinds of investments, but there's no greater investment than a relationship. And as you learn to love people where they're at, you become better at it. You learn to trust effectively. You learn to serve effectively. It does take a little bit of time to develop that craft of unconditional love in working with people. So here's a good question. If we're investing in people who are not guaranteed a return, how do we protect our investment? That's something that you can think about. Think about, I'm invested in this marriage. I'm invested with these children. I'm invested with this friend. I'm invested with this disciple. I'm invested with this coworker. How can I protect that investment? And what I believe is that it's an ongoing process. It takes time. Relationships, effective relationships, are built over time. But when there's unconditional love, that's the foundation to make an impact. So think about unconditional love. The second heart condition of a person of impact is an understanding heart. This is so important. We can make an impression from a distance, but when you get up close and personal with people, you're going to see some unpleasant things in their life. You're going to see some flaws. You're going to see some weaknesses. You're going to see some frailties. And once again, I'm so grateful that I'm here today as a leader because somebody saw all my weaknesses. They looked under the hood of my car. They saw what was working and what wasn't working. They had an intimate view of who I was as a person, but they had an understanding heart and they didn't give up on me. And in order to make an impact, this is so important. We should learn to understand how people think and understand how people feel. And that requires compassion. So not only do we need to have unconditional love, but we need to have an unlimited compassion. We need to be able to walk in somebody else's shoes. I love this quote. Someone said, before you criticize someone, you should walk a mile in their shoes. So that's compassion. Compassion is putting yourself in their place in the season and the place they're in. And when you walk in their shoes for a little while, then you begin to understand how they feel and understand how they think. If you're a leader and you're saying, I want to develop influence, I really want to make an impact in people's lives. Well, ask yourself this question. Why do most people want to follow you? Why should people want to follow you? Why will some people even move to where you're at just to be a part of your life, or change a job to work with you, or make a big life decision just to be around you? Why should people follow you? Well, and what are the reasons? Well, let me give you a few reasons. The reasons people want to follow us is, number one, because sometimes they have personal problems and they have needs in their life. And when you're a person that has needs and you're facing personal problems, you're always looking for somebody that could help you get out of that season and get to the next level. When I gave my life to the Lord many years ago, I wasn't really looking for a church. I wasn't looking for a building. I wasn't looking for a worship team. I wasn't looking for a preacher. What I was really looking for is for people that I could follow, people that had the solution to my problem. And what I had come to discover when I came to church is that people had the power of God that was the solution. And so I think when we're leading people, we need to really understand where they're at. We need to understand why they come to us. And sometimes they come because they have personal problems. Another reason people follow leaders is because of their personal passions. Everybody wants to grow in their passion. Everybody has a vision for their life. And I really believe that when they come into close contact with you and they see your vision and how you're experiencing success and how you're experiencing breakthrough in your life, it's contagious. It begins to rub off on them. It begins to give them hope. And that's why they want to follow you. So we've got to understand that. And the third thing is personal relationship. You know, the only way to grow is to get into relationship with another growing leader. And so I really believe with all my heart that these are 3 reasons why people want to follow you. And what's going to make you effective in impacting their lives is understanding where they're coming from, understanding their reasoning, whether they have personal problems, personal passions, or they're really desiring to grow and go deeper in the things of God because they're around you. The third quality of the heart that I believe a leader of impact has is also that unselfish heart, You know, it really does require sacrifice to make an impact. You know, there's sacrifice in everything we do, whether we're modeling from a distance or we're up close and personal with people. There's levels of sacrifice, but in order to make that sacrifice, we really have to have an unselfish heart. And one thing that helps me to make an impact in my leadership with people is I realize that I'm simply a channel. God has been so good to me that I can't help but to share what he's done. And so when I open up my life and I allow people to come in, I view myself as a channel of blessing for them, a channel for God. And this is where I feel most used by God. I feel most used by God when I'm allowing people in my life and I'm giving myself to people. I believe that when you build people, when you give yourself to people, you're building the kingdom of God and you're building the vision. And so that requires for us to not only have an unselfish heart, but to have a giving attitude when it comes to everything that we do. You know, God blesses a giver. And whatever area you're willing to give, whether it's in your finances or it's in your time or it's in your treasure, even in some of those personal sacrifices that are required with family, sacrificing family time for other people, God is able to bless you. He's able to bless your family, but it really comes from an unselfish heart. And let me give you the 4th heart condition of a person of impact. It's something called unusual effort. Unusual effort. And, you know, in Matthew chapter 5, verse 38 through 42, Jesus talked about the person that went the extra mile. And someone once said that there's not a lot of traffic in the extra mile. And it really is true that the people of greatest impact are the ones that are willing to make an unusual effort to make that impact. They're willing to not just go 1 mile with people, but to go 2 miles with people. Where others kind of quit and fall off, you're still there, you're still serving, you're still helping others, you're making that unusual effort. See, I'm talking to people that you want to make a real impact in people's life, and it takes time. It takes commitment. And I think that when we do it and we give ourselves, we should do it with joy. You know, not do it grudgingly and not do it in a grumpy spirit, but to really do it with joy. Because an unusual harvest is always the result of an unusual effort. And so I believe that if we want to make a personal impact and get up close with people and really make a difference, you know, we really got to be those servants. We've got to have an extra mile mentality. So let's review. What are the 4 heart conditions of a person of impact? Number 1, unconditional love. Let's love without limit. Number 2, an understanding heart. Let's learn to walk in others' shoes to understand how they feel and how they think. Thirdly, it's an unselfish heart. Let's give ourselves as channels of God to people in need and watch the Holy Spirit make the difference. And finally, an unusual effort. Listen, it's hard work, but it's worth it. The rewards outweigh the risk. Listen, that's my lesson for today. I hope you're catching fire. Listen, let's build our influence in a positive way. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and be sure to share it. We've got some great things coming up real soon. We also have some great guests coming up, so be ready, man. We're going to be having some conversations with some very amazing and powerful and influential leaders coming real soon. Love you. See you next time.